So Cornelia, welcome. Thank you
you.
for being here with us today. I feel particularly honoured that you're here with us, considering that I've managed to catch you in the 1.5 days that you're in the UK. So thank you for being here. So Cornelia, by way of introduction, I think you've got a particularly impressive resume as a data leader. You have previously been the global group director for big data and AI for huge brands such as Vodafone. You are currently a global advisor to a portfolio of different companies in the private equity space and beyond, where you're advising them on their data strategy, AI strategy at a board level. A wealth of experience that we'd love to delve into today and pick your brains about your journey and how you've been such a success. So I always like to start in the same place, which is really just talk a little bit about you and your background, your journey into data. So if you'd be so kind, it'd be lovely to hear a little bit more about your path into data thus far.
Well, thank you so much for the great invitation. It's such a pleasure. How did I land in data? Yes, I wouldn't have planned that back at the university. I've always done a mixture of international business and IT, and started 25 years ago, actually, in the car industry, which back then has already been data heavy. And, if you're scaling between 13 different big brands around the globe in terms of sales, marketing, but also production and whatever processes, you're producing a lots of data. And I've always been fascinated by innovation. I've always been fascinated by really having impact by building things, not on PowerPoint, but in reality. And so I started first at Mercedes, and then after some time got headhunted into Audi. Started in the digitization area, in an area between the business and IT, which was kind of, we didn't have Agile back then, but it was kind of in the year 2000, who would have thought 24 years ago, it was all about having impact using the data, using the latest technology, but for business impact. And that was actually the first project within Audi that saved millions. And I wasn't doing it on my own, but we were a group of people together with the big mother Volkswagen Group. So we really switched lots of retailer processes from pen and paper to digital, which sped up lots of things. And later on, I started to work more in these strategic IT management area, helped build this IT strategy for Audi, Seat, and Lamborghini. And data was always in the core, even though if you're speaking 2003, 2004, when we built it, data has always been the core to enable the business value, to enable the processes. Mm-hmm. So, and the more I delved into the use cases, the more I learned that it's impossible to do anything without the right foundations in terms of IT. At some point, the cloud came up, but it's always been about data, right? And I worked a lot in areas like sales, marketing, after sales on the IT side for Audi. So I was running or in charge of running the websites in almost 100 countries on the IT side with our business counterparts. And topics like CRM, where it's also data heavy. Don't need to discuss about it. Then social media came up, also very data heavy. And then the connected cars came up, and actually our team was supporting to connect the car and the website and the CRM. So you had, from a customer perspective, an integrated process. Yeah, that's a long time ago, but this is how I delved more and more into data, because without data you couldn't do anything. And then at some point, I took over my first CIO role here in the UK, 2012, and also here it's been a lot about innovation. But for that, you need the proper data, right, and the proper processes, the proper teams to have the business impact you want. And at some point, I was given the great opportunity to build up a data team from scratch for the Volkswagen Group, 13 brands. And I built up the first data and AI think tank back in 2013. Wow. And hired the first data scientists like 12 years ago, which back then also wasn't easy, but it probably was easier than what it looks like today in that situation where the war of talent is probably super hot. And so we built up the first data team. We built the capabilities. We built hundreds of use cases in the car industry, which then, scaled between brands and scaled between markets. And the topic has always been scaling. Why? Because this is how the car guys are thinking, It's all about speed, go to market, and scale at an appropriate cost. And so this is how I landed in the area of AI and data use cases, also in the area of what you need to do as a big corporation or as a small corporation to have the right people on board and to help build the capabilities that you need to keep up with the technology.
Perfect.
And we built the first Gen AI use cases, if you like, even before people were talking about Gen AI.
Yeah.
We've hired NLP people who were doing similar use cases. We just didn't have the technology, but we hired them back in 2014, 15,
Wow.
16. And, and now it's even more interesting than ever in terms of what you can do in terms of value creation for a company.
Yeah.
So long story short, I was in the car industry in many, many brands. I then joined BMW, so 16 years overall in the car industry. And then I changed the industry and went to another sector with also amazing data. So the car industry is data heavy, super interesting data in all the processes, sales, marketing, after sales, production, IT, obviously, cyber, and so on. And telco is also very interesting. And I came over again to the UK, started 4.5 years ago in Vodafone. I've really enjoyed it, leading the group team and, most of the local teams as an integrated team, about almost 300 data scientists back then. It wasn't always that size. We just insourced capabilities, and we really were focusing on what to do with the data, how to really create value and support the value creation in the customer-facing processes, but also many other processes.
Fantastic, great stuff. Well,
So
really impressive background. Further impressed now from from hearing more about that. But like you said, you're kind of like the queen of AI use cases insofar as you literally started doing this like 12 years ago before a lot of people were talking about AI in the way we talk about it today. So very, very impressive, and like I say, obviously done it across multiple different sectors, multiple different industries. Is there a particular approach that you, like a unified approach that you take to scaling a use case, irrespective of the industry? I'm sure each domain has its own particular nuances and trials and tribulations which you've got to be aware of. But what's your sort of approach to how you would go about taking a use case and actually, like I say, scaling?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. And I'm just flew over from Germany, where we had a discussion in something called AI Circle with lots of big brains from the German industry, where we talked about similar things. And what they said is actually that many companies don't even scale at all. So I'm very happy to look back to almost 12 years of scaling use cases.
Yeah.
What do I mean by scaling? I mean scaling in terms of business value, but also scaling in terms of the underlying processes and technologies, obviously. Let me give you an example. If you scale between automotive brands, you may scale between brands, or you may scale between a process between countries, production plants, or sales and marketing, or after sales. And scale is everything, because if you repeat building the same use case, same but different, then you just have massive costs, no business value, and no impact. For that reason, in terms of scaling, we always looked at if we built something. So first of all, we wanted to be innovative, so we also allowed trial and error. But what's the most important thing about scaling to me is the business impact. It's not only about the technology. The technology certainly help, but if the use case doesn't scale from a process perspective, from a business value perspective, it's really impossible to get the underlying technologies or people on board.
Yeah.
Then it's probably sometimes worth to build it to not scale.
Yes.
The question is really what do you want to achieve. But let me take some fantastic use cases where we had massive impact in the multiple dozens of millions, even beyond that, was for instance to optimize, to find issues before they even come up, to detect things. We didn't have Gen AI back then, but to detect issues from customer complaints, from retailer tickets, from all sort of data sources, and then really predict what would happen, and then filter out the right ones with, to prevent things from happening. And obviously, for that, scale matters, because if you're working in more than 100 countries, then you can't have different processes. So I think the longest it took us the longest time to gather the data, but also to make sure we work on a process that would scale wherever we would do it. It wasn't, it wasn't the magic the data scientists built. That wasn't the only thing. I think the biggest issue was to get the data and get the process in a form that it would scale.
Yes. Yeah.
Or parts predictions, for supply chain planning and parts planning, things that maybe doesn't sound so super sexy, but it's really massive business impact.
Super important.
If you get it right the first time. Well, you have to really look at what is the current process, what should the future process look like, so it can scale between different brands, between different markets, and then really build the solution.
Yeah.
But the way we built it was always to say, let's try and have a working prototype really fast and get the input and see if it's already, worth scaling, or if it's not good enough, then why scale it? So we really tried to make sure that we're killing things really fast.
Yeah.
But then also focusing on the winning use cases that were worth to be scaled. And obviously technology plays a super important part. So let me give you a recent example from the telco industry, where we really brought the cloud in. We switched off legacy wherever possible, so we had the same cloud wherever appropriate. And then it was easier with the different stacks to really scale fast, to have a joint go-to-market approach with the solutions that were built.
Nice, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about putting the right processes in there for scale, and absolutely, it's one of those things. Often I think people think, well, to scale, it's just about data, but obviously it's so much more than that in terms of it's the holistic approach to how you scale something. And I suppose within that as well, it's about people and obviously how you like I say, win hearts and minds, take them on the journey, and how, like say, especially if you're dealing with a complex initiative across multiple different countries. Yep. How do you obviously scale it internationally as well with regards to people? So talk us through your approach to training and people development in those large-scale data initiatives. How do you approach that?
Fantastic question. I think that's really the key of everything. So how did we start? In 2012, there weren't too many AI talents we could hire, or 2013. So we really looked into, on the one hand side, the business experts who knew the processes super well, and we tried to teach them what is available in terms of data, AI, and everything. And we took fantastic experts who were coming from IT and BI and were bringing in, I built up the ecosystem with the Silicon Valley partners. Back then, mostly Silicon Valley, but afterwards also we had great companies from London and other, hotspots we were working with. But we really put together diverse teams with experts from all sides, and we're making sure we could bring the best partners in to have the latest technology as well. And that was training by itself, because it was training on the job. They were working on their data with the right experts. Those experts are needed. Why? They're asking the right questions. Otherwise, you have fantastic data, but if you're asking the wrong questions, then there is no value, right? And we were bringing the right tech experts and the right partners on board. So we always built those teams, and in an agile manner, we could also change the teams quickly, depending on the sprint, depending on the use case. And we put together those experts. And how did we train, for instance, brands in the automotive industry that were willing to move ahead 10, 12 years ago, but they didn't have AI brains back then on board. So we brought a couple of people in. We co-located them in a hub that I built up in Munich. They came for 8 weeks or even longer. Some came for half a year. They brought in the business knowledge and the great connection to their brands, to their data. They brought the data with them if needed, and the experts and the use cases. And we were bringing the tech to the table in those agile joint teams. Mm-hmm. And together we created the use cases. And when they went back to their brand, they were AI experts who had done use cases successfully on their data, and those use cases were delivering business value.
Nice.
Does that make sense? And obviously, this is really how to build up internal competencies. If you have competencies, but maybe you want to do more on the latest technologies. And also we had to train the business, because otherwise, those experts wouldn't have known what is possible with the technology and vice versa. And this was a long time ago. And most recently, obviously, we did a lot of training on, first of all, the different tech stacks. So lots of training regarding the cloud. But then also on top of the cloud, we invested heavily in AI automation. So we did lots of ML ops, ML engineering trainings, and we built up nano degrees for the business for some certain areas.
Oh, cool.
Because if you build them a great dashboard, obviously they need to know about they need to know more about the algorithms, about the data, and so on. So we decided to build targeted mini degrees, mini nano degrees for those roles, for instance, in retail, and then we could really show them what is possible.
Nice.
And they hadn't worked with AI before or big data, but then, we explained for those certain roles, and that was really fast and inexpensive, let me say, compared to massive training efforts.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've not really thought that before, but the nano degrees element, I suppose, works on many levels psychologically for them as well, to get that sense of accomplishment, I suppose, for, and mastery of a particular area. So, that's a nice idea.
Obviously, on top of that, you need data governance trainings and other trainings. But if you have specialists, let's say in retail, who have to decide where to put retailers or what to invest in, or what to do in digital and so on, and what to do in a physical retail, they know their use case best. They know their questions best. But it makes sense to teach them what is possible from the technology and what the algorithms are actually doing.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, so speaking of what the algorithms are doing and the kind of governance piece, but AI in the last few years has exponentially evolved, the speed of which it's evolved and the power now that exists in a lot of these platforms. How do you approach scaling projects of this sort of size from a governance and I suppose ethics point of view? There's a lot of talk about ethical AI at the moment and that sort of things. What sort of safeguards and sort of rails do you need in place when you're considering that factor?
Very important point. Look, we have done a hell of a lot in the last role, looking after the customer data of roughly 300 million customers. You have to have that. And the first policy is public knowledge. You can have a look at the website. Was published in 2019, a couple of weeks before I joined, and we built on that. And I was the global AI champion, who built up the AI governance piece together with quite significant team. We didn't have teams for that, on purpose. We did, all of us did that as an extra head, if you like. And we had all the appropriate experts from across the business, from the B2B, from the B2C, from privacy, obviously, from cyber, from IT, from the experts from the regulatory space, and so on. So we built a team to build up that AI policy, which is now binding, and it's a lot of that, and obviously not everything is published on the website, so you can have a look at that. And by the way, lots of companies have done that, but I think we were one of the first ones really who have really started so early to get ourselves ready for upcoming regulation.
Yeah.
Why is this so important? We're not in, if you have a global footprint, especially across Europe, not just in the UK, the EU AI Act is a major topic we had to get ready for, and there are more and more regulations also, as you know, in Asia, in the US, everywhere.
Yeah, quite rightly so in a way. From a business perspective, a lot to wrap your head around to make sure you're ready for them, but in the same breath, encouraging that they exist.
And very often, on top of AI governance, obviously you need, or as a wraparound, data governance. And we did a lot there as well in the last years on a group level, on local levels, and I believe that if you're only doing AI governance without data, it's impossible without data governance. Right?
Yes.
You need the right data at the right quality.
Absolutely, for it to be effective. Yeah, totally. So you've interested to sort of understand how you see the future of data now, and given that you've created and been involved in scaling these use cases across multiple different domains and industries, where are you most excited about in the world insofar as the industries and domains out there where you feel really ripe for further disruption in data and AI?
Well, I'm excited about the value. So I think, it doesn't make sense to boil the ocean as a company. What I'm really particularly excited about is really to pick the right use cases, to do a proper AI portfolio management. So many of you will probably not heard about AI portfolio management. So what is that? It's really, especially with that Gen AI topic, making, you have mushrooming use cases everywhere. And the question is, how big is your AI? How big is your data team? How big is your IT team? Do you have bottlenecks somewhere? And if you have bottlenecks, nobody has resources everywhere, then it's really, I think, key to identify what are the main use cases in the core of the business and not random areas. What is in the core of the business and will help you disrupt the business and take the business to the next level. And this is where the value is created, and this is where you can really leverage traditional AI and Gen AI. I'm seeing a lot of companies who are not quite yet there in terms of picking the right use cases. They even don't know what they have in terms of use cases. So can you imagine, you have amazing people, you have invested in technologies, and you don't even know exactly what is going on. That, I think, needs to go from good to great in terms of knowing what is the strategy you want to follow, where is the business value that you'd like to support, what are the areas where you're prioritizing in use cases, and which use cases are you going to kill, so your teams can focus on the right topics and have more impact and more scale.
Yeah, I guess that's where your kind of value really comes in, doesn't it? Often it's not sort of going in to reinvent the wheel for a lot of these companies. It's just sort of seeing through the wood from the trees and actually kind of really coaching in the right direction to probably use a lot of what they've already got in the right way.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right, fantastic. Well, I think it's a really, really interesting conversation, Cornelia, and I think you further reinforced my opinion of why you're such a successful data leader. But I always like to wrap up every podcast with the same question, which is, throughout your career, what would you say is your one favourite piece of advice that you've either received or that you've given, just something that you kind of live your life by from a business perspective? I know it's putting you on the spot, thinking probably of one, but is there a particular piece of advice or mantra that springs to mind?
Well, look, I'm an agile Scrum Master. I'm somebody who wants to create value fast. Everybody can do massive, expensive projects that take years if you're in a large corporation. But I think, to me, speed matters. So I was given, when I built up this data lab for 13 different car brands, I was just given one briefing. You get the best people, and if you're doing 10 use cases, if 6 of them are success, we're happy. And I think giving a team that freedom, obviously you have to nail it, you have to bring business benefits, but you have to also focus on the really massive killer value topics. And for that you have to try and also fail and learn from where you're not succeeding to ensure that you're really succeeding in some areas. And learn from that. And so if the most important mantra from my side is really act in an agile way, where you then look back and say, what went well, what didn't go well, what is, what do we, in the next sprint, what do we really prioritize, and what can be killed, or, to really have the energy to deliver, and to deliver fast, and to deliver something that is in the core of the business.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's great. I think that aligns with the see the world through the same lens as Mr. Zuckerberg. Then he sort of says, fail fast. Fail
fast and cheap, and then scale with the great things that you are building.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the key things of a really good leader, is actually getting people to understand how to embrace failure, because obviously naturally, psychologically, we don't always associate failures with good things, but being able to reframe that for people, and I suppose, like you say, working for or having the support of a company to allow you to fail, and seeing that as a positive light in many ways as well is also quite key, isn't it?
Well, I would love to say we couldn't fail too often. I would really say we wanted to learn fast and cheap.
Yeah.
Learn fast and really bring that knowledge that is key to the business in the next, let's say, 5, 10 or even more years, bring that on board.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you have to learn and share the learnings.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to fail everywhere, We really had to try and bring in learnings fast. And if a use case didn't move fast enough, we stopped it.
Fair enough.
Because we didn't want to block the teams. And I think that mentality of really being cruel with what you're doing, looking at your use case portfolio and then saying, okay, this is good, this is what we take to the next level, and this is a nice idea, but not bringing the value, or the data isn't good enough. So let's refocus on the other next big things. Yeah,
absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Perfect. Well, Cornelia, look, thank you again. Nothing else remains but to say really honoured to have you here, and really lovely to meet you. So thanks for coming over. And next time you're in the country, please pop in again.
Anytime.
And come and see us. And I'm sure we'll put the worlds to right again about something else. But no, thanks for your time, and look forward to keeping abreast of your future successes.
Thank you so much.